Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. A naked Lisa was lying on the bed and looking up at the ceiling. Her body was lightly covered by the sheet. There was a slight smile on her lips. She was calm and content with her life, and it made her want to shout about it to the whole world. But she behaved with restraint because her husband never approved of excessive emotionality. It always annoyed him when she showed her emotions too vigorously, whether it was joy or annoyance, or amusement or anger. She was struggling to keep her emotions in check even now. Just now they were making love, and Lisa felt for the umpteenth time how much she loved her husband, as always happened when they got to bed. But what can you do? That's how emotional and loving she is. Lisa turned her head on its side and looked at her husband. John thoughtfully stroked the hair on his chest. His gaze was focused on the painting hanging across the bed. He was looking at it and thinking about something of his own. "What are you thinking about, sweetheart?" Lisa asked affectionately. John raised his eyebrows and made a vague gesture with his lips. "There is nothing to say," he answered absent-mindedly. Lisa could see that there were thoughts lingering in his head that would not let him rest. She turned to him with her whole body pressed against him and laid her head on his chest. "No way, I can see what you're thinking about." "Tell me," John sighed. "If she's bothering me, she won't let go. Not until he says something." He glanced at his wife and stared at the painting again. Then he spoke slowly. "I think we need a bigger apartment." Lisa immediately stood up and looked her husband in the eye. She was surprised because they had talked about this topic about a year ago, but John was against it. Why another apartment if this one suited them just fine? Of course, Lisa had hinted that they should have children, but the husband wasn't ready yet. "Do you really want to do that? John, are you serious? Do you understand what I mean?" Lisa asked hopefully. John shrugged his shoulders slightly. "I'm not stupid, I understand everything. And I think it's time to think about expanding our living space, since we're planning such a change. But I'm telling you, until we solve the question of the apartment, don't torture me with talk about children. I'm begging you. Are you ever like this? It's so annoying I can't contain myself." Lisa hugged her husband tightly and kissed him many times. No, I promise no baby talk. I mean it. Everything later on. God, I can barely contain myself. How happy am I? Are you? You're happy." John sighed and smiled slightly. Lisa could barely contain her emotions. It was so noticeable. If John had let her now, she would be screaming all over the house, jumping, bouncing on the bed, squealing with happiness. But he deliberately didn't allow her to vent all her feelings. He liked that kind of control over her. He felt like a very important person in her life, since she obeyed him. He kissed the top of her head and replied, "Yes, I'm happy. Let's go to sleep. We'll discuss everything. Then we'll discuss this weekend. A plan of action has been made. Good night, darling." Lisa frowned slightly upon hearing his words. Waiting a whole week to discuss everything. He's kidding, yes. All night now ready to discuss. And he makes her wait a whole week. And Lisa knew that if he said that, for a whole week, he wouldn't even talk to her about the apartment. Maybe he's doing it on purpose to make her agonize, but more likely he wants to show his power over her that way. But Lisa didn't resent him for that. She loved him too much to pay attention to such trifles. He loves her, and they've been together for so many years. That's the most important thing. Their feelings have been tested over the years, and nothing can keep them apart. They will always be together. John turned away from her and started to fall asleep, and Lisa looked at the painting and thought about the past. How long has it been? It seems like it's only been a couple years. They met when Lisa was 17 years old. John was 5 years older than her. He had just graduated from university, and the girl had just graduated from high school. John was an adult to her. He had a job, and she was a naive girl with rose-colored glasses, dreaming of a prince on a white horse, and he became her prince. Oh, how jealous her friends were when John began to court her, because he behaved differently than their peers, who were not even able to talk. He invited her to restaurants, drove her around in his foreign car, gave her expensive gifts. He was a little reserved, and Lisa had to keep her emotions to herself. She looked at him with admiration. She immediately fell in love with him without memory. They dated for about a year. And then John proposed to her. At that time, she had already turned 18 years old and was entering university for her 18th birthday. He gave her an expensive diamond ring. He threw her a fancy dinner at a restaurant. All her friends burned with envy that Lisa managed to snatch such a tidbit in the form of a grown-up guy who was ready to get her the moon from the sky. They got married. The wedding was modest because John didn't want to spend a lot of money on a meaningless celebration with a bunch of family and friends. After the wedding, they went on a wedding trip to Europe, and Lisa plowed on the wings of happiness. She'd never been out of the city. Europe. She considered herself lucky. Not only had she married for love, but she had secured a good future for herself. They bought an apartment, investing the money in half. Lisa was helped by her parents, and John invested half of the money. It was money left as an inheritance from his grandmother. And Lisa's parents had to sell the apartment. They bought a one-room apartment for themselves and gave the rest to their daughter. Lisa was against it, but her parents made such a decision. The girl graduated from university and got a good job. Now she earned almost as much as her husband, and it was possible to think about children. But John put it off. He said they weren't ready yet. Children are a huge responsibility, and you have to think about it from every angle, plan it out. And then her parents died. Mom got really sick. Cancer took her in 6 months. There was nothing she could do. Dad couldn't get over the grief. 3 months after Mom's death, he died of a heart attack. Lisa took the grief hard. Only thanks to her husband, she was able to withstand such a terrible blow of fate. Having lost both parents, she became even more attached to her husband. Now he was her only support. She had no one else. John was her only family now. There was also a cousin, Cindy, but she lived in another city. As a child, Cindy often came to visit them on vacations. The girls were friends. But as time went on, life took them in different directions. They kept in touch. They congratulate each other on holidays and birthdays. But that's where their communication was limited. Lisa sold the apartment that Lisa inherited from her parents and put the money in the bank. All this time they were paying interest. A decent sum had accumulated. If John added a little more, after the sale of their small 2-room apartment, they would have enough to buy a big 3-room or even 4-room apartment, and then they could have a baby. God, she could be a mother. Lisa even wept. She stroked her flat belly and smiled. She couldn't wait for it to happen. She was already 30 years old. It was time to have a baby. She was already dreaming a little bit, but the circumstances of life had turned out that way. But now she could dream of the future with peace of mind. If John had started this conversation, then he was ready for a change. Lisa closed her eyes and sighed. She began to fall asleep, and all night long she had strange dreams. She dreamed of children, lots of them. They were all holding out their hands to her, begging her to take them. Lisa wanted to take them all, but as soon as she held out her hands, all the children disappeared, and then she was in total darkness. She couldn't see anything in front of her. She walked around bumping into walls for a very long time until she realized she was locked in some small room. She found the door, but it was locked shut. No matter how much Lisa knocked and screamed for help, no one helped her. So she stayed in total darkness, all alone. And then she screamed and woke up. The unpleasant residue of the strange dream, almost until morning, bothered her. But in the morning, all memories of the nightmare evaporated. A few days passed. It was Friday. In the morning, Lisa discovered that she had a flat tire. She took a cab to work, and after work she wanted to go to her favorite candy store, where she always bought cakes and pastries. She wanted to buy John's favorite cupcake to make him feel good. It wasn't a long way, but she wanted to go for a walk. The weather was beautiful outside, and Lisa's mood was excellent. Today would be a good time to talk about their plans. They could discuss buying a new home, plan their next steps. Lisa wanted to ask her husband about the baby. He would be angry that she was asking about everything in advance, but she didn't care. She was already 30 years old, she was no longer a young girl, and she needed to know what would happen next and what she could count on. Lisa had already been walking for about 20 minutes. She turned down a walk through which she could take a little shortcut. There were only private houses here and no high-rises. She liked this street. It was always quiet here and hardly any cars. And the houses were so pretty, but not new. When she walked here, she felt like she had traveled back in time. She wished one of these houses belonged to her. It seemed to her that even the air was different on this street, cleaner, fresher. She sighed and smiled. Yes, it would be cool if they bought a house instead of an apartment. They would make a cozy yard where they could sit in the evenings, talk and enjoy the peace and quiet. And after the baby was born, Lisa would be outside all the time, walking with the baby near the house. And then John would build their baby a playground and sandbox, so the baby could play as much as he wanted. How beautiful is that? Lisa walked slowly down the street, dreaming of the future. Eventually, she even stopped near one house. Most likely no one lived in it because it looked uninhabited. However, Lisa dreamed of just such a house, big, stately, with big windows. Yes, it wasn't new, but that didn't make it any less attractive. Lisa stared at it for a few minutes, and then she realized, if anyone sees her, there will be questions. She looks too suspicious from the outside, standing there, peering around other people's houses, like a criminal who is up to something bad. Lisa quickly looked around. Thank goodness there wasn't a soul on the street either. No one had noticed her strange behavior. Lisa giggled, satisfied that no one saw her, and leisurely walked on. She reached an intersection. There were no traffic lights on it, but there was a crosswalk. Apparently, there is no such traffic flow to put a traffic light here. A crosswalk is quite enough. Lisa looked around. In all the time she had been walking here, she hadn't seen a single car. Yes, it really is very quiet and peaceful here. Lisa thought this was the best neighborhood to live in. The girl smiled thoughtfully again, dreaming of buying a house on this street. Then she stepped onto the road to cross to the other side. Just then, she heard the squeal of brakes. From that moment on, the seconds flowed so slowly, like a dragging mat. At first, Lisa didn't realize where the sound was coming from. Then she realized it was right next to her. She froze in place as she reached the middle of the road and turned her head to the left. The last thing she saw was a bright yellow car, very close to her. She even managed to get a glimpse of the woman behind the wheel. She had a very frightened look and red hair. She opened her eyes and mouth wide, probably screaming. But Lisa didn't hear the screaming. She only heard the nasty sound of cars braking, and then suddenly she felt a sharp pain. She didn't realize what happened or where the pain came from, because she immediately fell into darkness. She didn't even have time to scream out of surprise and fright. Before she lost consciousness, she thought about how she suddenly felt so wistful and scared, as if everything she loved and held dearer to life had suddenly disappeared from her life. I guess that's what always happens before death. And then she blacked out. So what do we do next? What do you suggest? We can't just leave things as they are. We have to do something. Lisa heard her husband's voice, only it sounded like absorbent cotton in her ears. She was so sick, she didn't even want to open her eyes. Let everyone go. She wants to be quiet. She wants to sleep, to rest, to lie down, to be left alone. She's had a terrible night's sleep. She should tell John to go into the other room and talk on the phone there. But her tongue wouldn't listen to her either. There's nothing I can do. I've already told you. I suggest you accept that fact. If you make any more noise, I'll have to have you thrown out of here. Don't yell at me. I'm only doing my duty. It is not my duty to be disrespected like this. Lisa heard a foreign voice. She thought she could hear better, as if the absorbent cotton from her ears had suddenly disappeared. She frowned and wondered. She hadn't heard that voice before. What was going on? She was sick and John had called the doctor. Why does her whole body ache? Why doesn't she have the strength to even open her eyes? What's the matter? Without opening her eyes, she raised her hand to touch her lips. She felt like they were so badly parched that she couldn't speak. As soon as she did, she heard it. She woke up. "Lisa, can you hear me? Tell me you can hear me." "It's me, John." "Lisa." Lisa realized her lips weren't as dry as she thought, but she couldn't speak loudly at first. "I can hear you just fine, except I can't speak loudly. Why do I feel so bad? I'm sick. I have a sore throat. I'm not thinking straight," Lisa whispered. She felt John take her hand. "You've had an accident, dear," he said affectionately. And then Lisa abruptly remembered a momentary flash in her brain, and she remembered being hit by a car in a crosswalk. It was yesterday, I think, or a couple days ago. She couldn't realize how much time had passed. She opened her eyes abruptly, but it was still the same darkness around her. What was going on? Why is it so dark? "The lights were turned off quietly," she said. The answer was silence. Lisa suddenly felt some kind of trouble approaching. She repeated John again. "What's going on? Why is it so dark? What's wrong? You don't say anything and you scare me. Where am I? Why is it dark?" She was already speaking louder, and you could feel the panic approaching in her voice. John squeezed her hand and said, "Calm down, Lisa, calm down. We're going to fix this. This is only temporary. I'll be right by your side. Don't worry." "John, what's wrong?" Lisa screamed in a panic, already guessing. "What is it?" "You're blind, but it's only temporary. Your eyes are perfectly fine. That's for sure. Don't you remember how the doctors examined you? You've been in and out of consciousness several times. Lisa, don't be afraid. The doctors will find out what's wrong with you. We'll find the best doctors, and you'll be able to see again. Everything will be just like it was before. I promise you. Just don't panic. You have to stay calm right now." Every word John said was a stone that hammered at Lisa's heart. She felt that she was in such a panic that she was going to die of terror. Everything that was happening seemed like a horrible nightmare. And she wanted to wake up now, but she couldn't. Lisa started to scream. She tried to get out of bed, clinging to the sheets, pushing her husband's hands to her. She opened her eyes wide, but couldn't see anything in front of her. It was such a terrible sensation. She felt as if she were dizzy, but she couldn't exactly say that because she couldn't see anything. She was just floundering on the bed with no sense of space, and she vomited violently and threw up right on the bed. She, choking on vomit and tears, continuing to scream between bouts of nausea. It was horrible. She wanted to die this very minute so that relief would come, to not feel so helpless anymore. "She needs to be sedated. Hold her hand." "I'll do it." John held her, even though it was quite difficult. Lisa had so much strength that even a grown man couldn't handle her. The doctor gave her an injection. Lisa immediately felt weak. She was still crying and twitching in her husband's arms, but her strength was becoming less and less. Before she completely passed out, Lisa heard the voices of the doctor and her husband. "It's a shock. It will get better. It's just that right now, the first reaction is the most violent. She'll get over it. You'll see. Everyone comes to terms when there's no other way." The doctor said it calmly. How? How is that possible? After all, she was hardly even physically injured. How could she lose her sight so suddenly from a single blow? Could this really happen? My God, how are we going to live? John's voice was worried and frightened. When Lisa woke up again, she was still under the effects of the injection. She didn't have the strength to make any sudden movements because she was immediately nauseous. While she was senseless, the orderly changed her bedding, changed it to another one. Lisa could smell the foreign odor of some kind of remedy. John was beside her. Lisa calmly asked to tell her husband about the recent events, and he did. It turns out that Lisa had been in the hospital for 2 weeks. This was a shock to her. She thought she had been hit a day or two ago, and she had been here for exactly 14 days, and she had no memory of those 14 days. She only remembered how she had passed out after being hit by the car. The worst part was that there were no witnesses to the accident. No one saw the accident happen. No one knew how long she had been lying on the road. Doctors estimate that she was unconscious for about 10-15 minutes before she was found. A man was driving by. He called an ambulance. Surprisingly, there were no serious injuries, just a few bruises, a shattered elbow, one cracked rib, but her head appears to have been hit hard. Lisa was examined, diagnosed with a moderate concussion, but the consequences were unpredictable. She lost her vision, and it wasn't just any injury. Nothing serious was found. What had happened was that Lisa had lost the most important thing in her life, the ability to see. John held her hand while he told her everything. Lisa tried to act calm. She knew her husband didn't like any emotional outbursts. Judging by his calm voice, he would not be happy about her crying or screaming even now. The girl clutched his hand tightly and thought about what to do next. She periodically opened her eyes out of habit and turned toward her husband. But as soon as she realized that she had no vision, she immediately clenched her eyelids tightly, trying to remain calm. When her husband told her everything, she tried to pull herself together. What next? John said that she would not be kept in the hospital any longer because there were no serious injuries and the danger was over. But what about her vision? What about her eyes? A doctor who specializes in such injuries is coming today. I paid a lot of money for him to see you and consult with you. Don't worry. I hope he can tell us how to restore your sight. I believe you'll be healthy again. It can't be otherwise. Dear Lisa, I hoped she would. Otherwise, there was no reason for her to live in this world. The professor had a consultation, but he didn't say anything reassuring. Lisa could tell from his voice that he had nothing to offer them. He looked at the results of all the examinations, examined Lisa, did some of his own checks and tests. And then he didn't even bother with them. If he had at least taken John away and told him everything in private, the girl would have had some hope. But he gave his verdict right in front of her. I'm sorry, but your situation is very dire. You'll live happily ever after, or briefly and badly. It depends on you and your mood. But your eyesight will not come back to you. Unfortunately, such traumas are quite common, and some of them have completely unpredictable effects on the human body. I can quite confidently say that in your case, there is nothing that can be done. Well, unless we take out your brains and put in new ones. But that, alas, is impossible. Medicine hasn't advanced that far. The professor thought his joke was very funny, but his words only horrified Lisa. Knowing what you're about to tell me, that you're going to seek out the best doctors, that you want another opinion. You're right, young people, but I can tell you with certainty that any doctor will tell you the same thing I did. So I advise you to accept everything and move on with your lives. Believe me, you'll get used to your new condition. Dear lady, everything gets used, and you will get used to it. I can assure you that many people lead even more fulfilling lives than they did before they lost their sight. You are the only one who can cope, and no one can help you. You and your husband who will help and support you. My advice to you is as soon as possible. Convince yourself that you will be blind forever and start living by the new rules. If you need to, I will give you some contacts of specially trained people who will help you adapt quickly to your new surroundings. Will they teach you how to navigate at home? A lot of people can even get around on their own without help or guides. You're a young woman. Believe me, you can learn. It may take a few years, but you're in no hurry to get anywhere now, I'm sure. The professor laughed again at his joke, thinking that in this way he was resolving the situation. John and Lisa listened silently to the authoritative doctor, who instantly deprived them of even the smallest hope of a cure. When the professor left, Lisa could no longer contain herself. No, she didn't throw a tantrum, or freak out, or rage. She just cried so bitterly that everyone who heard her crying had tears in their eyes. Lisa mourned her broken life, her happy future, her plans and everything that made her happy in life. She could see nothing now. She had become blind. What would she have to live for? She would now be an invalid, a helpless vegetable. She won't be able to do anything anymore. Not to cook, not to go to work and shopping, not to put on makeup, not to smile at her husband, looking at his face. Shit, she can't do anything now. All the things that used to give her pleasure, the most ordinary things she'd never given much thought to before, they're all out of her reach now. She'll never be complete again. She'll grow old and she won't even know what she looks like. Her husband will see her change, and she won't even be able to care for herself because she won't see the changes in her appearance. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. No, she doesn't want to live like that. Would she rather die than live like this? Lisa stayed in the hospital for a couple more days, and then the doctor who monitored her conditions said that she no longer needed medical attention. I understand that you are in shock, but believe me, people get used to everything, and you will. And it's really not as bad as you think. You've adapted to your wife's unusual condition, and she'll get used to it, and you'll be able to lead a full life. It's not like she's confined to a wheelchair. You just need specialists to help her adjust quickly. I would also recommend psychological help. Lisa is a very sensitive and emotional person. I am sure that a psychologist will help her to cope with the problem, and she will come out of the depressive state without consequences. Before discharge, said the Dr. John, who was sullenly silent at this. Lisa was discharged and she returned home, although it was hard to call their apartment home for Lisa now. When you see familiar things and familiar walls, you immediately feel calm and peaceful. Lisa, on the other hand, could see nothing. Her home was simply a labyrinth for her, in which she had to wander from day to day in total darkness. For the first 24 hours after her return, Lisa was afraid to move. She was grateful to John for taking a week off to help his wife get used to her new condition. He decided not to hire any specialists to help his wife. He had called several of them and learned that such services were not cheap, and they were now not allowed to be lavish. Lisa was out of work, and there was no telling what would happen next. Part of John's savings went into his wife's recovery. Doctors, imported medicines, some tests, a call to the professor. All of this required money. John was now working alone. Lisa needed some medicine. They needed something to live on. Now John had everything on his shoulders, so he decided not to pay for expensive specialists to help his wife adjust. John decided to do it himself. For a week, he helped Lisa to settle in. He took her around the rooms, had her identify everything by feel. He taught her how to use the shower and toilet. He told her where and what was where. He made her walk on her own. Lisa put a sleep mask on herself and closed her eyes. She couldn't walk just like that. Her eyes went wide open and she tried to see anything at all. It was all in vain, but her attempts caused her eyes to start hurting badly. And then the migraine started, which was hard to control. Lisa remembered how she had always wondered what people who couldn't see anything felt, and why their eyes looked so strange, even though they hadn't suffered any trauma. She grimaced as she tried to remember why she used to be interested in such things. Now she was experiencing the bitterness of blindness. Now she realized why these people always covered their eyes with a patch or dark glasses. They just felt more confident, she thought. At least, that's how she felt when she clipped the sleep mask over her eyes. She also remembered her strange dream from a few days before the accident. Kid's dark room, absolute darkness, silence, and locked doors. And despair, consternation, bitterness, and fear. Those feelings, too, she remembered. Now she realized why she'd had that dream. It was a warning. Would she have avoided this disaster if she had interpreted the dream correctly? Who knows? Maybe this is her destiny. There's nothing she can do to change it. Lisa cried every night. Her husband consoled her as best he could. But at the end of the vacation week, he said, "Lisa, stop crying so much. I can't comfort you forever. I start work on Monday. I can't sleep at night. I shudder at your sobs. You don't give me or yourself a break. We can't hold on much longer. What's there to hold on to? I'm going crazy. And you tell me to calm down. How can I calm down when I'll never be the same again? I can't accept it. Lisa answered him crying, and John continued to feel sorry for her. Time passed. John went to work after several sleepless nights. He went to sleep in the living room, and Lisa was afraid that she and John would drift apart. She was afraid that she and her husband would never be close again. She promised him she would never cry again. John bought her some calming pills. They helped a little. He went back to the bedroom, and Lisa began to feel better and even began to sleep at night. 3 months after the incident, they made love for the first time. It was very strange for Lisa. They had never done it in total darkness, but she tried to imagine that they just had a blackout. They had succeeded, but a strange feeling lingered in her mind, as if things were not as they usually were, that John was treating her differently. She tried to push those crazy thoughts away, but it was very hard. As soon as Lisa had gotten her disability, she had been fired from her job, or rather, laid off with 3 months' pay. Lisa was now officially unemployed, and never again would she be able to work anywhere, ever again. She would now sit at home for the rest of her life. She was no longer capable of doing anything. When she asked John what they should do about buying an apartment, he told her with irritation, "What apartment? Lisa, are you out of your mind? Why do we need a big apartment now? A new place is a new space. How will you be able to navigate in a foreign space if you can barely move around in our own apartment? You won't be able to walk a foot in it. It'll take you about a year to memorize where everything is. And I don't have time for that. I got work to do. I'm trying to feed us while you stay home." Lisa almost choked with indignation. Why would you say that? So I'm to blame for what happened to me? Am I sitting at home by choice? Yeah, I'd work 24 hours a day if I could. And you're telling me I'm not doing anything. Aren't you ashamed? I'm not ashamed because I didn't say anything wrong. I told you the facts as they are, and I didn't mean to offend you. I was just stating the situation at the moment. We can't afford a new home right now. It's better to hold on to whatever savings we have. I don't know what's gonna happen. It's better to have some kind of financial cushion. I wasn't trying to insult or offend you. Lisa clenched his fists helplessly, sitting back in his chair. How badly she wanted to look into her husband's eyes, to see his gaze, to know how he felt. But it was impossible. She tried to pull herself together, but she couldn't. She could feel her night mask over her eyes becoming damp with tears. Lisa whispered quietly, "What about the baby? I mean, we wanted a baby. We wanted to buy an apartment so we could have room in it for a baby. How can we find room for a baby in this apartment? There's plenty of room, just the two of us." There was silence, and Lisa regretted once again that she couldn't see her husband's face. What was he thinking about? Was he looking at her or away? What a child you are. What child can you talk about if you're blind? I don't know if you're laughing at me or mocking me. All right. Maybe you can carry the baby a little bit. That's understandable. But then what? How are you gonna take care of it? You're blind, Lisa. You can't see anything. If you forget that, you can't do anything on your own. Maybe you can only put your breast in the baby's mouth, and that's if I carry it for you. And the rest you just can't do. So what's next? I'm gonna quit my job and take care of the baby. And you'll just be happy you did your duty. Why would I do that? Put my life on hold with a blind wife and a small child. You really need to see a psychiatrist. Lisa, you're in over your head. If you dare talk about a child. Lisa got goosebumps from everything she heard. John was so angry when he said all these unpleasant things. At the end, he walked out of the kitchen. Lisa heard the front door slam. He had gone somewhere else without even saying when he would be back. But Lisa didn't care right now. She tried to digest what she had heard. So her hopes for a full-fledged family would never be realized. She would never become a mother, and she would never be able to hold a child in her arms. It's over. She had nothing to live for. She was shattered. She sat at the table for a long time, clutching the night mask she'd pulled off, exclaiming. She opened and closed her eyes. She was no longer crying. Her mask had already dried. She just sat there, unmoving, immersed in her own darkness. Soon John returned. He walked over to his wife and sat down next to her in the chair. "Lisa, I'm sorry I was too harsh. I said a lot of unnecessary things. I've thought about it, and I want to tell you that if you want to." He didn't get a chance to finish because Lisa interrupted him. "I'm sorry I'm so stupid. Apparently my blindness has really changed me a bit, but I won't act like that again. I'll try to be more reasonable. I won't say stupid things and annoy you anymore. I don't want us to fight. You're the only person I can trust. I have no one else who can take care of me. I don't want to lose you. Thoughts of a baby are really so crazy that I'm gonna forget about them now. You're right. A baby is out of the question. I totally agree with you. I promise I won't say such stupid things again. Just forgive me and let's forget the whole thing." John was taken aback at first, but then he smiled and said, "Yes, darling, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Let's not fight anymore. We're going through a difficult time. If we fight, we'll only spoil our relationship. And I don't want that. I love you. We'll get through this. We just need to stick together. And the baby's just gonna get in the way of that. We can't handle him in this position. I'm really glad you realize that. It means your common sense is still intact. Let's forget the whole thing. I'm hungry. Are you hungry? I'll think of something." Lisa looked into her tears and smiled. Even though John had already moved away from her, she tried to hold on, but it was getting harder and harder for her. She had hoped that they would overcome the difficulties, but they didn't. A chasm of misunderstanding began to form between her and her husband, and Lisa was afraid that it would lead to nothing good. And so it did. From that day on, they became more and more estranged. It was impossible for Lisa in her position. She couldn't even go anywhere without an escort. But John began to behave differently. He started to stay late more and more often at work, or maybe not even at work. Lisa couldn't find out anything. She was very bored at home alone. And one day she asked John to teach her how to use the telephone. Her husband thought for a long time about how to do it, and then he bought her a push-button phone. He filled in all the numbers she needed, told her which button to press to call a certain person. She had too few close people left to call. She asked that John be sure to get her cousin's number. They had only spoken once since the accident. She offered her help, but Lisa said she was fine. Cindy never called her again. Now Lisa could call her husband anytime she wanted. She felt a little better. She hung the phone around her neck on a special lanyard, and now called John at work very often. At first, John picked up the phone every time, but then he began to resent her for calling him too often. "Don't you realize you're distracting me? Is that why I bought you the buttons and the phone? So that you can distract me all the time? Lisa, for God's sake, stop bothering me. Otherwise, I'm gonna be sick of going home soon. Although sometimes I don't want to go home anymore." When Lisa heard those words, she was frightened. Had her husband fallen out of love with her? He had never said such things to her in his life. Her blindness repels him. She has already noticed that at night he moves away from her and turns away, and they no longer have heart-to-heart talks. They haven't talked much at all, because John isn't home all the time. When he comes home, he says he's very tired, and Lisa has stopped bothering him with constant phone calls. She only called when necessary, or when he was very late at work. When she questioned him about coming home late, John would get very angry and irritatedly reply, "What did you want? I have to work for two. Your disability pension is a drop in the bucket. But I stay late because I get paid to work extra hours. And don't bother me with your questions like you don't know how hard it is for me." After that, Lisa didn't ask any more questions. Then a week later, John didn't come back for so long that she got worried. She called him. He didn't answer for a long time. When he did, she could hear the irritation in his voice again. Why are you calling? I was wondering when you're coming home. It's 9 o'clock at night. You've never been so late before. Nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. She asked thoughtfully. Nothing's wrong, except that you're distracting me a lot. If anything had happened, I would have called you. I'm fine. I'll be home around 10 o'clock, John said sternly. Lisa was almost relieved to hear his voice. But when John ended the call, he didn't immediately disconnect the cell phone, and Lisa could clearly hear a quiet female laugh. And then the words compared again. Forget about her. Come to me. And the cell phone went off. Lisa squeezed her button phone. What's a woman next to him? What does that mean? Isn't he at work? And then Lisa recognized that she knew exactly where John was. He's not at work at all. He's probably been cheating on her for a long time. And he's got another woman. And she's the one he spends all his evenings with. She's the one who's by her husband's side right now, comforting him. This woman was able to replace her Lisa, and now her husband doesn't even want to go back to his blind wife. Lisa must have started to look terrible. He's disgusted to be attracted to her. So he found himself a young, beautiful girl who took pity on him. Lisa barely waited for John to get home, and she immediately voiced her grievances to him from the doorstep. She had expected anything but such cold indifference. I don't understand. What's your problem with me? What's your problem? I don't. Yeah, you gotta be kidding me. You're probably cheating on me. And I have to agonize over it. Who was that woman? Your partner? A coworker? Speak up, Lisa said. Oh, that's what it was. You sure you want to know everything? What's good? I don't want to hide anything from you. I have nothing to be ashamed of. Yes, I have a mistress. I spend time with one woman, and I think I need it. At home, I have a blind wife waiting for me who can't feed me or care for me or caress me. That's normal too. You think this is easy for me. I already think I've put up with it for a long time, but it's just impossible. I can't bury myself alive. I can't devote my life to taking care of you. I'm sick of all this. Life didn't prepare me for this. I want to come home and relax, see his wife looking beautiful and well-groomed. I want a nice dinner. Not this. I come home and I have to take care of you, feed you, take you to the showers. If you knew what you look like now from the outside, hair gray, eyebrows peeking through, ungroomed, pale, no manicure. It's just creepy. You don't make me want to touch you. That's why I have to go after work to the woman who takes care of me and brings me back to life. Lisa felt a wave of rage and indignation. What is it with the living? You don't go around being pushy or even trying to hide it so as not to offend her. Why is he doing this? To hurt her, but she won't allow it. How dare you do this to me? What right do you have to do this to me? I'm speechless. You have no right to hurt me like this, to lie to me and say it so openly, as if on purpose. I won't let you make fun of me like that. And then John laughed, and his laugh was so unpleasant that Lisa got goosebumps. What can you do? Kick me out. But try it, I'm telling you, you won't succeed. I'm not leaving here. It's not just your apartment. And I'm gonna live here. And I'm gonna do what I want to do. And you can't stop me. Who are you? Just a blind woman who's nothing without me. You're totally dependent on me without me. You can't make a move outside of this apartment. If you don't like it, you can leave. I'm not holding you back at all. Just how far you'll go, my dear. That's the same thing. You'll sit at home and wait for me to come home from work. And I'll come when I want. And I'll feed you and bathe your motherfucking head and shave your legs and cook and clean. And you will smile silently and thank me. You understand? And if you ever once again from the book that you're not satisfied, you'll be sorry. You'll go hungry for a week on dry rations, or I'll leave you alone for a few nights to make you feel so lonely that he'll be so lonely you'll want to go out. No, Lisa whispered quietly. What did you say? John frowned when he heard her dare to interrupt him. I said no. I don't want to live like this. I won't put up with you sleeping with another woman. I don't want to live like that. It doesn't suit me. So what? That I'm blind. I'm your wife, you hear me? Or have you forgotten that? Some ridiculous accident took away my sight. But my body, my brain, and my mind are still the same. I just can't see anything. And I'm trying to learn everything I can to relieve you. But I need time and your support. And how can you give me that support if you're not home all the time? No, I'm not going to put up with your cheating. Lisa's voice was quiet but firm. John looked at her in bewilderment. How dare she talk to him like that? She's nothing. Oh, you're not satisfied with that? Well, good riddance then. Go away. I'm not holding you back, and I'm not even going to hold you back. Why don't you say something? You can pack your things and go. The door is open, darling. Lisa stood motionless. After a moment, she said, "Okay, I won't be here tomorrow." She walked cautiously, by touch, out of the kitchen and into the bedroom. She sat down on the bed and froze. She felt so defenseless that words couldn't even describe it. There were no tears because she didn't even want to cry. She just wanted to disappear, to fall through the earth, disappear without anyone even remembering her. Where would she go? She said she wouldn't be here tomorrow. But where would she go if she didn't leave the house herself? Why did she say that? Because she couldn't be here anymore. She wasn't well with John. He didn't need her. He openly told her that without even embarrassing himself. Apparently, since she was blind, he didn't care about her. It wasn't like she could look him in the eye with a judgmental look that would award him. And actually, if she was sighted, this situation wouldn't have happened. She would have quietly continued to live with John. They would have bought another apartment, had a child. But that's never gonna happen. So what to do now? Lisa heard John taking a shower. And then she thought of one person who could help her. She fumbled with her hands to find the phone sitting all around her neck and clutched it tightly in her hand. And then she pressed the button of a certain caller by feel. She pressed the phone to her ear. For a few seconds, she strained to listen. What if she was already asleep and wouldn't answer her? But then she heard a slightly sleepy voice. "Yes, I'm listening." "Hello, Cindy. It's me, Lisa." "Lisa, it's true. Why are you calling so late? Is something wrong?" "Oh my God, something's wrong with John." "No, John's fine." "Cindy, I need your help." "No, I'm not dying. I just need your help." "I'm sorry. I don't have anyone else to call." Of course. What's this about?" "I'll help you in any way I can. Just tell me what you need." Lisa was silent for a few seconds, thinking about what she wanted to say. What if Cindy did not agree, if she refused her? But she wouldn't know that until she told her. "Cindy, can you take me away? I must get away from John as soon as possible. I'll tell you everything if you come. I've got nowhere to go. I don't know what to do. I have no one else to turn to. I'm sorry for calling so late. I'm just at a loss. I don't know what to do. When it's urgent, I can take the train tomorrow morning. I'll be at your place around 0 o'clock. That'll be fine." "Fine. I'll be there. Don't worry. I'm on vacation right now. You're not giving me any trouble. Don't worry." "All right. I'll see you tomorrow." When Lisa put the cell phone aside, she breathed a sigh of relief and put her hand over her heart, trying to quiet its frantic pounding. Everything was going to be okay. Cindy will pick her up tomorrow. John would be at work. They'd be able to pack up and leave in peace, and she didn't want to come back here again. We just need to get all her papers, a bank card in her name. There's an account in the bank with the money from the sale of the apartment, her parents. She's got money, so we'll be fine. 10 minutes later, John came into the bedroom. He snickered arrogantly, making it clear that he considered all her talk to be nothing. He was sure she wasn't going anywhere. She couldn't take a step without him. She's like a blind and defenseless kitten. "I'll sleep in the hall. I'll wait a few days for you to cool down and get all those crazy thoughts of leaving out of your head. And when you apologize to me for your behavior and come to terms with the fact that I have another woman, then I'll be gentle and friendly with you again. and all will be well. I went to bed. John picked up his pillow, took the plate and left. Lisa silently listened to his speech and said nothing. She only clenched, bursting so hard it hurt. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. Even if she is forever blind now, she will never, ever let anyone treat her like this. Yes, she's blind, but she's not a thing. She's a person. She is a woman, and she continues to feel in love, but she is also capable of hating, if she needs to. 0:00 Lisa was going through the clothes in her closet with her hands, trying to determine what kind of thing it was by touch. 3:00 she has already packed the things she will take with her. When Cindy arrived, she would help her get her suitcase. They would get the papers, and Lisa would leave this apartment she had once been so happy in. And now she wanted to get away from it. The next day, Cindy arrived around 1:00 in the afternoon. She hugged her sister, but didn't ask her what had happened. Cindy helped her pack her things into her suitcase. She found all the documents Lisa had listed for her, putting everything in a separate folder. Cindy put it in her suitcase. After thinking for a moment, Lisa asked her, "Do you think I can take all my jewelry, or are they better left to them?" Cindy frowned and firmly replied, "I don't know yet what's up with you guys. From the looks of it, not very well. But I think you can pack whatever you see fit, and no one will judge you for it." Lisa sighed and asked her sister, "Then get the jewelry box in the closet. It's unlikely to fit in the suitcase, so just pour them out somewhere when they're fully packed." Cindy helped Lisa put on her sneakers and then gave her some sunglasses. The girls stood in the hallway for a while, and then Lisa quietly but firmly said, "Let's get out of here soon. I can't stay here any longer." And they left. Cindy called a cab, and they went to the train station. Cindy bought 2 tickets for her city. The train left at 2:00. All this time, the girls sat on a bench in the station square, and Lisa told her story. During this time, Cindy wiped away her tears. Several times she felt so sorry for her sister, who had to endure so much. And she wanted with all her heart to help her. And she didn't regret coming. This girl needed someone who could get her out of all this shit and who would teach her how to survive in this world where disabled people can't always count on help and support. And that person was going to be Cindy. She wasn't going to spend her whole life helping Lisa and being her loyal assistant. She was going to teach Lisa how to do all the ordinary things that a working person doesn't have to do. That's how they began to live together. Cindy had a 1-bedroom apartment. She was already married to a very rich man. Married early and for love too. But that love ended very quickly. The marriage lasted only 3 years, and then they divorced, and her husband bought her a 2-room apartment. He agreed with her that she wouldn't claim anything else. They had no children, thank God. Cindy's vacation had just begun. There were 3 more weeks of vacation ahead. And from the day after her arrival, Cindy set to work. Lisa was puzzled. She was going to suffer a little, lamenting her fate and her failed family life. But Cindy wouldn't let her. "If you expect to lie on your bed from morning till night, you are mistaken. Yes, I'm sorry you're blind. But you have to realize that you're either going to get strong and continue living under the new rules, or you're just going to turn into an old peer who will curse everyone. I felt sorry for you, but I'm not gonna feel sorry for you anymore. I have 3 weeks to teach you to be more or less independent, and I demand that you pull yourself together and work hard instead of lying on the bed all snotty." Cindy proclaimed her speech. Lisa realized that she had to live by the rules set by her sister. She had taken her in, so it was best not to make her angry or disappoint her. And they were both going to take it in stride. The first night, Cindy Lisa had a strange dream similar to the one she had had before the accident. She was once again locked in a dark room. She wandered around in the dark, bumping into the walls. She found that door again, held the handle, and again the door was locked. But then she heard some kind of rustling sound downstairs. She squatted down and started fumbling around on the floor, and she found a small key. Could it be for this door? She got up again, found the door keyhole. She put the key in there, and the door opened. She saw a light so bright she had to cover her eyes with her hand. The last thing she saw before waking up was dark hair, dark eyes, and a man holding out his hands to her. The next morning, the girl set to work. At first, Cindy drove her around the house from morning until evening for several days, interrupted only for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. By evening, Lisa was exhausted, but by the end of the third day, she had a complete picture in her head of all the rooms and every object in the apartment. Cindy had taught her how to use her footsteps to determine where she was, and Lisa now measured everything with her steps, and she no longer bumped into walls. For another day, Cindy taught her how to use the shower and toilet, how to brush her teeth and wash her own hair. She showed her where the hairdryer lay, how to turn it on. It took another 3 days to teach Lisa how to navigate the kitchen. The kitchen itself was half the size of her and John's, and Lisa quickly memorized where everything was located. Cindy taught her how to use the microwave, how to heat her own food, how to pour water into the kettle, how to wash dishes. Lisa could now feed herself, even clean up after herself. In 2 weeks, Cindy had taught her what John could not. Her husband just did the chores for her, but didn't teach her how to manage on her own. Cindy, on the other hand, acted differently. She let her sister know that she was not helpless at all, and that she could safely be at home on her own and not get bored. She learned how to use the vacuum cleaner, mop the floors, dust. She was now busy all the time instead of sitting still, and she felt so good about it, like she felt alive for a long time. Cindy left the hardest part for the last week. When she voiced her plan to her sister, it was the first time Lisa had dared to object. "No, I don't want to. It's out of the question. You want me to die of fright on the spot. No, I can't do that." She was screaming because she felt helpless. "But Lisa, you realize you can't go on like this for the rest of your life. You have to get used to the idea that I won't always be around, and you have to get over your fear. You know how it is. Haven't you ever seen it in the movies?" Cindy calmly continued to talk her through it. "It seems so easy in the movies. This is life. It's different. I can't do it. Cindy, I really can't. How do you know if you haven't even tried? You're gonna try. Practice for a week. And then you can tell me if you can't. It's not like I'm asking you for anything excessive. I'm just asking you to try. What if you can? What if you like it?" Cindy persuaded her sister all evening. But Lisa was adamant. When Cindy was ready to give up and admit that she couldn't win Lisa over, the girl suddenly agreed. "Okay, fine. I'll give it a shot. But just promise me, if after a week I tell you I don't want to anymore, you won't make me." "I will. Yeah, I promise." Cindy was happy, but she was sure it wouldn't happen. And the next morning, Cindy and Lisa went outside, and Cindy began to teach her sister to walk outside by herself. Their yard had a fence, so Cindy was not afraid that Lisa would go far away and get lost. For several days in a row, they walked with her from morning until evening. Cindy had chosen one path, and from it Lisa was already counting Lisa's steps to see where else to turn. She navigated the curbs, determining which way to go. It was very difficult, but very exciting. Cindy showed and told her the location of several benches. By the end of the week, Lisa could find them on her own, and it was a triumph. When they were about to go to bed on Saturday, they said good night to each other. Lisa looked in on her again. "Sorry to bother you. You haven't gone to bed yet." "No, go ahead. Do you need something? Do you have a headache?" No, I'm fine. I don't have a headache. I just wanted to tell you. Cindy, I don't know how to express how I feel, but you've done so much for me that I'll never be able to thank you for the rest of my life. You're my salvation. How grateful am I for your help. You've brought me back to life in 3 weeks. I can do so many things now. It seems like simple things, but it's so important to me. And I just want to say that I want to keep going outside. I love walking, breathing the fresh air. I'm so glad you got me out. I'm sorry I doubted you. Cindy, even wept. Her sister spoke so touchingly. It was impossible to take her words calmly. Cindy hugged Lisa and whispered in her ear, More on that next. I'm going to teach you everything, and then I'm going to let you go free. Lisa decided not to find out what those words meant. She decided to leave it for later. 3 months passed. Lisa went out alone every day, but not too far. A couple times a week, she went out in the evenings with her sister, and with her she could already walk all over the yard. Cindy didn't even hold her hand. She just walked beside her, only occasionally making remarks and pointing her in the right direction. But one day there was a big accident. Lisa was coming down the steps to go for a walk outside. The last step was left, and then her foot bounced on a pebble, which immediately bounced aside. Lisa lost her balance and fell backwards. As soon as her head hit the pavement, she thought she saw a blue flash before her eyes. It was like the sky. Then it was gone, and Lisa lost consciousness. She woke up in the hospital. She realized it at once because she heard the familiar smell of remedies. Who was holding her hand? Lisa wanted to turn to the side, but she couldn't turn her neck. God! She fell down and was paralyzed. What a horror! Not only is she blind, but now she can't move. No, 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 not this. This is a nightmare. Why is she like this? What's wrong with her? She's breathing somehow. It's weird hearing Lisa hear Cindy's voice. I think she's panicking. It's nothing to worry about. We'll give her a sedative at school now. It was an unfamiliar male voice. No, I don't need a sedative. I'm asking you not to give me an injection. First, tell me how serious it is. I'll never walk again. Yes, it is. Just don't lie to me. What are you doing, Lisa? Are you out of your mind? Doctor, she's fine. Cindy was worried. Oh yeah, she's fine. She just thinks she's paralyzed. Yes, Lisa, I'm sure I'm saying don't worry. Everything's fine. The doctor's voice was so unusual, as if a mist of warm dewdrops was enveloping her. It was as if they were leaving traces on her skin, giving her goosebumps. What's your name? Calmer already? Lisa asked. My name is Robert. You can just call me Robert if you want. I won't take offense, and you're not paralyzed. You just took a bad bump and strained your neck, so we've decided to fix your neck just in case. You're wearing a special brace that prevents you from moving your head. Can you move your arms or legs? If you don't believe me. Yes, indeed, she could move all her limbs. Thank God. That's all she needed. Thanks later. I thought I was done. In fact, when I saw that blue flash in my eyes when I fell, I thought I'd never get up. Scary. I'll tell you that Robert asked Cindy in a worried tone. You said she was completely blind, isn't she? Instead of Cindy, Lisa answered. Yes, I'm completely blind. I had a big accident that left me unable to see anymore. Robert took her hand. Lisa felt goosebumps from his touch. Lisa, what did the doctors tell you? You've been to the doctors. Can you tell me the opinion of everyone who examined you? Well, at least the ones you can remember. There was only one professor, a hospital doctor, and they all said one thing I'll never see again. I never saw anyone else. Robert excitedly told Lisa I'd like to do some tests. And it's not just about your eyesight. I'm more concerned about your neck spine. And I'd like to say something else. If your blindness was permanent, you wouldn't have seen that blue flash you described to me. The loss of vision may not be related to the head bump, but for a completely different reason. And I'd like to see for myself, if you'll let me. And Lisa did. Within a month, Robert was undergoing many tests, not only on her vision, but also on her bone and muscular system. She had already been discharged, but Cindy brought her in for checkups and consultations. She was seen by several neurologists, a psychiatrist, a therapist, and 3 massage therapists. The last one to see her was another neurosurgeon. And then Robert gave his verdict. Lisa, I can tell you with almost 100% certainty that your vision can be restored. We did an examination which revealed that you had a single nerve that had caused this. If you agree to one surgery, you will probably be able to see. Lisa cried. Robert took her hand, and again goosebumps ran down her skin. Why did his touch have that effect on her? Lisa quickly calmed down because the doctor's voice was preparing her from all sides, making her feel safe. Robert spoke for a very long time. He convinced her that it was worth a try because she had nothing left to lose. For a whole month, they did not examine her. They took her apart and analyzed her case. Robert talked to Lisa a lot, taking a thorough history. He didn't notice how he began to treat her as anything other than a patient. This beautiful and lively, vivid and emotional girl evoked in him a feeling he had buried long ago. He thought he was no longer capable of love. But Lisa made him feel like a man, and he really wanted to help the girl to get her sight and normal life back. In the end, Lisa agreed to the operation. What did she have to lose? She would either remain blind or her sight would return. She didn't want to think about the other options. They decided that the operation would be in 3 days. They sat in his office as they discussed the final preparations. Lisa was scheduled to go into the hospital in 1 day. When Robert got up to walk her to the door, Lisa suddenly put her hand on his shoulder and said, "Can I do something? I've always wondered when I've seen it in movies, and I want to know what blind people experience when they do that." "You can." Robert didn't know what she meant, but he agreed without question. And then Lisa reached out and touched his face. She touched his forehead, eyebrows, eyes, cheeks, lips, and chin. Then she ran her hand through his hair and smiled. Usually after something like this, people say you're beautiful, or I now know what you look like. But alas, I didn't realize anything. I just know you have very smooth skin and no beard. Thank you. I'm sorry, Robert smiled and said quietly, "I'm sure you can still get a good look at me. I hope you won't say that I'm ugly and that you don't like me at all." "No, I won't say that. If I can see again, I'll thank you for bringing me back to life. You'll be there for the surgery." "Of course I will. I'll be there." 3 days later, Lisa was wheeled into surgery on a gurney. She was very nervous, trying to calm down, but it was difficult. She tried not to cry in front of the operating room. Robert took her hand and, leaning down, quietly told her, "I wanted to say this after the surgery, but I can't help myself. I don't keep a close relationship with my patients, but soon you won't be. When it's all behind you, you'll come to dinner with me." Lisa giggled nervously. "I can't make any promises. I need to look at you first and see if you're scary." Robert laughed and let go of her hand. And Lisa was already in the operating room and thought of something else she wanted to say, but was afraid to. She wanted to say that she would love to go to dinner with him, even if she never got to see him again. Lisa woke up to a wild headache. It stuck to her. Immediately, the nurse came over. "What hurts? Do you feel sick?" "My head hurts a lot," Lisa whispered quietly. The nurse immediately gave her an injection. After 15 minutes, the headache subsided. The operation had been a success, and the doctors would now come to see the result of their work. Lisa had already recovered from the anesthesia. She could not move, but she had no strength. She felt very weak and anxious. What is waiting for her? There's a bandage over her eyes, and soon it would be removed. God, how scary. At 200 hours, everyone was in the room. The nurse removed the blindfold from the patient's eyes. "Can you open your eyes?" Robert said softly, and Lisa opened her eyes. Later she could see again. Unbelievable. She felt uncomfortable even with the invited light, but she could see it. She exclaimed and started looking around constantly, blinking and squinting. "Oh my God, I can see," she muttered. Some doctor examined her for a few minutes, and then he said she would be fine. There was no more danger. The doctor said something else, but she couldn't hear anymore. Only one thought was cultivated in her brain. She sees she is no longer blind. She is normal again. She is no longer disabled. And Lisa closed her eyes, afraid to cry. Then she felt that someone took her hand Marashko on her skin. She realized it was Robert, and she slowly opened her eyes. She looked at the man who could be said to have saved her, and her heart cleared. She knew him. She had seen him in her dreams. This was the same man who had held out his hands to her in her dreams. When she opened the door in the dark room, it was he, her savior. "Hello, Robert." He smiled at her. Lisa squeezed his hand. "Hi." Lisa smiled too. "At what? How are you feeling?" Lisa felt a tear run down her cheek. "I feel great. It couldn't be better. It's like I've been reborn." "To what? When are we going to dinner?" Robert pretended to frown. "We'll have plenty of time for that later. You're still my patient, so we won't discuss it now." Lisa stroked his arm. She hoped they would have plenty of time, because there was so much she wanted to tell him. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Lisa looked at Robert and stroked his cheek. "Yes, I'm sure it's time to let bygones be bygones. I've been dragging it behind me for so long. I want to be with you. I want to marry you, but that's impossible until I evolve. But I need to talk to him. I need to see him. I need to thank him for pushing me away. Because if he hadn't, I never would have met you, and I'd still be blind," she said. It had been 3 years since the operation. Lisa and Robert had been living together for a long time. They had fallen in love, and the young woman was happy her health was fine. Her eyesight had returned in full. The only thing that marred her happy life was that she was still officially married to John. It was time to finally trash the unnecessary. In all 3 years, he had never once called or written. He hadn't inquired where she was, how she was, if she was alive. And Lisa wanted to pay him a visit to set the record straight. She came to her town, which she hadn't been to in over 3 years. Gladly, she found that she felt no trepidation or regret. She had made the right choice to leave here because she had found true happiness and love. When Lisa took a cab to the apartment building where she lived with John, she felt some kind of anxiety about what awaited her, how he would react to her recovery. He would be pleased or saddened. She didn't care though. Lisa paid the cab driver and got out of the car. After standing for a few minutes, she walked slowly up the steps to the entryway as she was already climbing the steps to the entryway door. Her skin was covered in marashko. She froze, then slowly turned around and looked at the cars parked in front of the entryway. Her gaze stopped on a yellow Jaguar. When she saw that car, she felt a throbbing in her head. She had seen this car before once, only where? It felt strange, like she was missing something important. She's missing a detail. Wait, that can't be. This is the same car that hit her that time on No Man's Landing. It's unbelievable. Lisa was 100% sure because she saw the sticker on the window of the woman driving. She remembered seeing the same one on that car. Oh my God, is that really her? Lisa turned pale. She felt her palm get wet with sweat. She had come to get rid of the past, and it turned out the past was haunting her. Lisa paid the price. Then she turned abruptly and walked up the stairs, needing to get rid of all thoughts. She didn't want to even think about that woman being anywhere near her. She needed to go up to John's and work things out, and then get out of here, to Robert. When John opened the door to her, he was stunned. He had never expected to see his wife on his doorstep. Lisa stared at him for a moment, then said, "Well, hello, my dear husband." Surprised. "Lisa, how did you get your sight back? How is that possible?" John was shocked, and Lisa grinned. "Anything is possible, only you didn't believe it. And neither did I, to be honest. Except I met some people who made me believe, helped me, and voila, I'm healthy again. So are you gonna let me into our apartment? Or do I have to bring a lawyer?" "A lawyer? I mean, what's a lawyer for?" Lisa pushed him aside and went into the apartment, and she immediately saw signs of another woman's presence. Women's shoes, makeup in the hallway, bags, perfume. Yes, the new landlady had already moved in. Well, John didn't waste any time. I wonder if it's the same woman he cheated on her with. Or is it a different one? I see you're doing well. I'm sorry I have to ruin your idyll. I came to tell you, I'm going to file for divorce. John turned pale and looked toward the bedroom. There was fear and anxiety in his eyes. She realized that his mistress was here now too. Oh well, she's just about to meet her. Dear someone, A grocery delivery voice was heard from the bedroom. Lisa frowned. What kind of voice was it that disgusted his mistress? It sounded like a violinist. She raised one eyebrow and whispered to John, "Maybe you introduced us. She knows of my existence. Or did you tell her I was dead? Or are you lying to her that we've been divorced for a long time?" Just then, a woman came out into the hallway singing an aria. It was a small, chubby person with red hair. That's odd. John had always liked slender, tall girls. This woman didn't fit his idea of beauty. Lisa began to stare at the woman. She thought she had seen her before, but she couldn't remember where they had run into each other. She frowned, scrutinizing her face, and the woman folded her arms across her chest and looked at her defiantly. "You're so obviously not a grocery delivery person," she said in her nasty voice. "And you're not a housekeeper. I am John's wife, and you are his mistress." The woman looked at John. "Honey, you said she was blind. Have you been lying to me?" "Kelly, I wasn't lying to you. She was really blind. I don't understand anything. I don't know how this happened. Kelly, I had nothing to do with it." Lisa looked at both of them and grinned. Yes, he is apparently groveling to his Kelly. They deserve each other. "I don't know why you're here, but you don't belong here. You're not really John's wife anymore." "That's right. You left him. I'm the boss now." The woman looked at her confused. Lisa wasn't confused. "No, I'm still the boss, even if I'm only half the boss. But I've come to make up for it. John, I'm filing for divorce, and we're gonna split this apartment in half. I don't think I have anything else to do here. I'm done." Lisa turned and walked toward the door. Then her eyes fell on the table by the hallway. She saw a key fob from a car alarm. It was bright yellow and had a Jaguar badge on it. Lisa felt goosebumps run down her spine. She suddenly realized something. She turned to the woman and asked, "Is that your car out front?" "A yellow Jaguar." Kelly grinned and replied, "Well, let's say it was. What do you care if it's the same car you wanted? You can't find it. It's not available in that color anymore. It's painted, customized for me." And then Lisa realized how she knew this woman. She's the one who hit her the other day. She's the one who fled the scene. She's the reason Lisa lost her sight. It was her. "So you're the one who hit me. You're the bitch who left me unconscious on the road. You're the reason I had to suffer so much. And you got away with it, and got away with it." Kelly turned pale and covered her mouth with her hand. John didn't understand anything. He looked from one woman to the other. "Kelly, what is she talking about? What is this all about? You're the one who ran her over." "I don't know what you mean. I never hit anyone. None of this is true." "Kelly," Lisa said. "No, you did. I saw you then, and your hair and the sticker on the glass. I remember everything. I remember you now. Your red hair. I'll never forget it. How disgusting are you? You'll answer for everything in court. I'll make you pay for all my suffering." Kelly's courage suddenly left her, and she started to look very strange. This is the kind of scared little puffball who, eyes bulging with fear, her face was crawling and so was her hair. And she didn't know what to say. "You're going to pay for everything you've done," both Lisa said, and walked out of the apartment, slamming the door. Lisa divorced John. She would not sue Kelly. John was on his knees begging her not to. In return, he promised to give up his rightful half of the apartment. Lisa realized that he was willing to do anything for his mistress. He didn't even care that Kelly was responsible for the breakup of their family. He was only thinking about keeping his mistress out of court. Well, advice. Yes, love. Lisa didn't want to stir up that hornet's nest of a past. She was fine now, and she was happy. She just wanted to forget everything. The apartment after the divorce was all to herself. She didn't know the fate of her ex-husband and the woman who was responsible for her loss of sight. She wanted to forget about them forever. It didn't matter now what had happened before. Lisa sold the apartment quickly because she had put a low price on it. When the deal happened, everything was finalized. She got the money. She immediately bought a ticket to go back to Robert. As she rode the train, she smiled. She was going to give the money left over from the sale of Cindy's parents' apartment. Her cousin had accomplished the impossible. She had helped start Lisa a new life, and she had changed her destiny. Lisa wanted to thank her. She knew Cindy would refuse the money, wouldn't take it, but Lisa would think of something, and she would keep the money from the sale of the apartment with John in her bank account. Let it sit there for a while. She and Robert will get married, and then she'll have the baby she's already carrying under her heart. Lisa stroked her belly and smiled even wider. All her dreams were coming true one by one, and this was just the beginning.